Bill Maher is in hot water for his take on the ladies of the Diddy trial. Man, he's getting a lot of heat from the usual suspects, of course. Well, let's just hear what he had to say.
I get it. Part of the allure of the music industry is you want to be a star. But if we're going to have an honest conversation about abuse, we also have to have an honest conversation about what people are willing to do for stardom. If you want a #1 record on the chart so bad you'll take a #1 in the face, some of that is on you. If you're literally being held captive, that's one thing. But if you're putting up with whatever for love or for your career, then you need to have a little more honesty and accountability about that. Ike Turner was a psycho, just like Diddy.
Now I wonder, what would you do if I sang out of tune?
Give you a black eye.
Would you stand up and walk out of...
Oh, wow. Yo, Ike Turner was a wild dude. What is he talking about? The thing about the Ike and Tina story is, like, if you just take the movie at face value, it doesn't tell the whole story about their relationship and how they were getting down back then.
In an era where there was no movement to help her, Tina Turner somehow got away. And it's not victim shaming to expect women to have the agency to leave toxic relationships. Quite the contrary. To not expect that is infantilizing them. If Diddy walks free, it will be because his lawyers can point to an endless stream of text from Cassie expressing what's often called enthusiastic consent to their sex life. If you're Me Tooing someone, it doesn't help your case if you texted him, "Me too. I just want it to be uncontrollable." If you want us to think you weren't always ready to freak off, don't write, "I'm always ready to freak off." Or wish we could have FO'd before you left.
He raised some interesting points there. You know, and this is the funny thing about it is, like, you bring it up in these conversations and nobody takes you seriously. But someone like Bill Maher, who, you know, granted has his own platform on HBO, you hear it differently now, right? Because people on YouTube, you want to say that people on YouTube are somehow Diddy defenders when they point out obvious logical flaws in this case. When they point out how Rico is a little much for what these freak-offs are being. Recently, Cameron did an interview with Sheree, also known AKA as The Punisher, and they spoke about the reality of what the freak-off was and what was going on there. Sheree actually mentions that Diddy really doesn't take an active part in the freak-off, that Cassie was involved in every step of setting up the freak-off situation. So that goes from paying the person, booking the appointment, looking up the website, picking the person, and then he walks in briefly and walks out, mind you, after sitting in the corner with a veil on, which strange as hell, weird as hell, but it's just some freaky shit. They were posing as a married couple. And these people who were taking part in these freak-offs, they want to say this is criminal enterprise because of prostitution, right? But Sheree points out the fact that he was just a stripper. This was supposed to be a birthday surprise for Cassie. No, this was supposed to be a birthday celebration for Cassie. And they were supposed to do something like a stage scene, a live in-person corn scene, let's just say. And the first time he didn't even go through with it. You know, they did not have intercourse. So, of course, the 9 times after that they did. And like I said, Diddy's off in the corner being a cook. It could almost be said that Diddy is taking a passive participation in this FO, right? And I'm not saying Diddy is a saint. I'm not saying Diddy isn't any kind of dirtbag for doing what he's done. But I got to say, you just can't say this guy is guilty of running a criminal enterprise because of that. Now, you got some other things that are lining up against him. True indeed. And though everybody's touting the fact that Diddy, all you got to do is get 2 of those things and it's Rico, these things are not going to hold up on appeal. Let me be the first to tell you, if you haven't heard it already, The appeal for this case is going to be crazy because there's no way this guy can get a fair trial in this current climate. I heard the craziest thing, and it should have been obvious to me because I'm pretty sure somebody's talked about it in the past few weeks, that everybody's doing the Diddy video, right? The jury in this case is not being sequestered. You know what that means, right? The jury is not being kept in a central location where they can then be kept away from all of the media that's coming out about this case, all of the press that seems to be going in one direction, right? How can the jury be unbiased in that situation? That was one of the factors I said that would trigger a mistrial. That was one of the factors. Despite the fact that I don't see how any one of them, I don't see how they can get a unanimous decision in this case, how it's going to be all 8 of them are going to agree on it. And Bill Maher's bringing up the good point here. I think Brian Steele called it in court. Brian Steele called it a Me Too money grab, right? So we're in a place right now where, you know, people like Bill Maher are pointing out things that should be common sense, right? Things that we should have thought about in this process. But anyway, it's interesting. Bill Maher's going in. He putting his neck out there in some ways. In some ways, I don't think he realized that he was putting his neck out there in that way. But they're going to stay provocative. The writers on that show are going to they're going to say what's on everybody's mind that's like not going along with the current narrative, you know? And like I said, this doesn't say anything about Diddy's innocence or guilt. Diddy did some heinous, horrible shit in this case. But that being said, he still deserves a fair trial. You can't just lock him up and throw away the key because you don't like him or he is unsavory. And I think sometimes the current public opinion seems to think you can. They seem to think that you should be able to you should be able to lock up people for life that you don't like. That is some childish shit. That is some very sophomoric ideas of how things go. Because if a family member of yours was in that situation, would you feel the same way? If you were Janice Combs or one of Diddy's daughters, would you feel the same way about that? Anyway, let me know what you think about it in the comments. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification for all uploads. If you want to watch more, please watch one of these videos down below. This is Faucette Media.